What is vitamin E? Well, in high school, you might have learned alpha tocopherol is vitamin E. Maybe in graduate school, somewhere along the way, we learn alpha tocopherol is vitamin E. And what I'm going to talk about is it's probably the biggest mistake in nutritional history to isolate alpha tocopherol. And so we're going to go in the importance of that. And first of all, I'd like to start out with why am I bringing this to you and not some expert in alpha tocopherol or vitamin E. Well, I had the opportunity to read a library that was put together in the turn of the century and up until the 1960s that had all of the research on vitamin E and all nutrients for that matter. And it took me about 10 years to plug through that library. And so I'm bringing a lot of this is from having access to that library. So some of this will be, you can find on the internet, some you can't. So bringing all this to you now. Now, why is this important? Well, let's start out with who will benefit. Why should you watch this, presentation? Well, the general population, because if you're out there taking supplements and wanting to better your health and understand, from a vitamin E perspective, what you should take, this is definitely going to benefit you. So you don't waste your money on supplements that are going to maybe do you harm. And definitely waste on something that doesn't do you any good. So general population, next clinician. Now, I don't know if you remember in the 1990s when, all the cardiologists were recommending, alpha tocopherol in high doses for heart disease. And then all of a sudden they stopped, about 10 years later because of all this problem that we're going to get into, because it was causing high doses of alpha tocopherol was causing mortality rates to go up. So, as a clinician, you want to get the best product to your patient. So by understanding the real history behind it, it'll help us guide through this, nutrition matrix. And then if you're a nutrition educator, if you're teaching people about nutrition and you want to know what really happened with vitamin E and answer a lot of those questions, we're going to do that today. And last but not least, if you're a researcher out there that, is research not just, alpha tocopherol, but other researching in nutrition, you'll definitely benefit by learning the history behind vitamin E and why all these mistakes were made, because it'll help you make better research projects. So what I want to do is I want to give an overview of what we're going to talk about so that, you'll know where all the pieces fit if you have a general idea of where we're headed. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with wheat germ oil as vitamin E, and this is way before alpha tocopherol was ever developed. And so we're going to talk about wheat germ oil in fertility issues, not only helping women get pregnant, but maintain a pregnancy and a healthier pregnancy. And we're going to go through the history on vitamin E or wheat germ oil and heart disease and how it helped heart disease, a lot of the research on stamina and increasing athletic performance, and even into cancer. So we're going to go over wheat germ oil before alpha tocopherol. Then we're going to get to why was isolation of alpha tocopherol the biggest mistake in nutritional history, because not only it affects us once, but affects us twice in the history of nutrition. And so we're going to talk about alpha tocopherol as the vitamin without a disease. Because if I asked you right now, just turn off your YouTube channel and search for what disease is associated with alpha tocopherol, I'd be willing to bet you can't find it out there. So we're going to talk about, why it was the vitamin without a disease. And then the rebirth of alpha tocopherol as an antioxidant and why that was a major mistake in nutritional history. And then we'll go over the failures of antioxidants and why. And then we're going to go over the new vitamin E complex. So researchers are coming back around to wheat germ oil, but we'll end up with the original and best source of vitamin E is wheat germ oil. And we're going to go over the modern perspective on wheat germ oil. So that's where we're headed. So before I get started, I want to talk about this from a research perspective. Why is it so important to dig up all this information? Why not just move on and forget about all this. Well, here is why it is super important. Down here, this triangle represents nutrition or research in general. In general, what's at the base of the triangle is the earliest research. And then based on the information from early research, we build on that and then build on that and build on that. So if we make a huge mistake down here at the base of the triangle, then all subsequent research is going to be a mistake on top of a mistake on top of a mistake. And we'll see this as we move along. So, and why this is relevant to clinicians is as these mistakes are made, we're taught as clinicians to, if we're going to do a research project, you only look at the last 10 years because all this is, you don't need to look through this. You only look through the last 10 or 15 years, and that's the only thing that's really valid. Well, I'm going to show here that you really need to know from here to be an expert on these subjects, because you need to be able to put it all into perspective. Okay, so here we go, the forgotten history of vitamin E. Now we're going to start with the beginning of vitamin E, and that is in 1922, Evans and Bishop found that a purified diet with vitamin supplements that supported good health and growth in female rats nevertheless failed to support normal reproduction. The embryos were being reabsorbed before the end of pregnancy. Okay, so the first food, now notice food that was found to prevent this problem was lettuce, but they found wheat was more potent than lettuce. And then wheat germ oil had the highest potency. So back then, there was no such thing as alpha tocopherol. It was just a food would, cure the condition is the idea. And wheat germ oil was the most potent. So vitamin E was named for the results of wheat germ oil on the rats, enabling them to bear young and to stop having, early abortions. So the effect was named vitamin E. So that's very important. The effect was vitamin E. Now, before we move on, I want to make sure we're all on the same page when I use certain words like wheat germ oil, defatted wheat germ. So here we have a whole wheat, okay? It has the bran, which is the covering, that's full of B vitamins. Then you have the germ, that's what germinates, okay? And then as 10% of the germ, there's this oil in there, okay, in the wheat germ oil. And then this inside part is the endosperm, or the pure starch. And so they refine this. They remove the bran and the germ, and they make white flour, which they make pastas, breads, and cereals, and they throw away the bran and the germ, and they feed it to pig farmers and all that. But so this is considered a discard. So this wheat germ contains oil, 10% of it's the oil. Now, if I extract the oil, then I've got wheat germ oil and I've got defatted wheat germ left over. So that just kind of gives you an idea of these different parts we're going to be talking about. Okay, so here we go. So obviously the early research was on fertility. So a German picked it up in 1930s. Mueller picked up this research and said, hey, I'm going to try wheat germ oil in other experimental animals. And he found that it worked great in other animals. So therefore, the veterinarians picked it up and they started using wheat germ oil in both large and small animal practices. Now, Mueller began using wheat germ oil successfully in women with sterility issues. Okay, so that's where it started in humans. And then many other investigators confirmed his findings. So it wasn't just one person. This sort of became really big enough to end up in the British Journal, Medical Journal in 1937, vitamin E. Now notice it says vitamin E here. They're not talking about alpha tocopherol. They're talking about wheat germ oil in the treatment of habitual abortions. And they say, in conclusion, may I say, vitamin E as wheat germ oil, we appear to have a means of treating a most distressing condition with some hopes of success. Doesn't cure everybody of fertility issues, but it helps a lot of people. So therefore, until further observations are made, it would appear safer to give throughout the whole of pregnancy. And we're going to see why later. This is really good idea. But my point is, This is back when vitamin E meant wheat germ oil, not alpha tocopherol. So here's another one, the role of wheat germ oil concentrate in prepartum care. So the 2,000 women that walked in this clinic before they had wheat germ oil given to them, here were their complications of birth: threatened abortions, toxemia, prematurity, stillbirths. They are pretty high, okay? Now the next 1,000, over to the right is the next 1,000 that came in the clinic when given wheat germ oil, and look how the numbers went down, decreased. So this is suggestive of giving wheat germ oil throughout the entire pregnancy, not just to get you pregnant, but to keep you pregnant. That's why it's one of my number ones to give to female patients throughout pregnancy, just to maintain a healthy pregnancy. Now, it started becoming known for muscle degenerative conditions because some of these women would notice, hey, my muscle pains are better, or this or that. So they started experimenting. This is out of the Lancet, 1940. Vitamin E and muscular dystrophies. In the treatment of muscular dystrophies and nervous diseases, here, vitamin E. The results of giving vitamin E for muscular dystrophy and ALS support the contentions that these are deficiency diseases and curable. Now, in this particular case, they were using wheat germ, not alpha tocopherol. So sometimes they would use wheat germ, sometimes wheat germ oil, and both would be equated with vitamin E back in the day, okay? Now, this is Journal of American Medical Association, Treatment of Muscular Dystrophies and Allied Conditions, wheat germ oil, not alpha tocopherol. I want to make that very clear, very, very clear. So now wheat germ oil is of value in many cases of menopausal hot flashes and headaches. Now I put this in there. This is from Dr. Shute back in the day, but I put this in there because I've actually seen lots of patients that have had definite help with menopausal hot flashes by taking wheat germ oil. So that's why I'm putting this in the presentation. Cancer. Now, why I'm putting cancer in there is in the 1990s, they were trying to use alpha tocopherol to help cancer patients from this antioxidant standpoint, and it failed. It actually caused higher rates of cancer. So I just want to show you that the earlier concepts on cancer had to do with wheat germ oil and not vitamin E as alpha tocopherol. So here I'm going to read this. The reason I'm reading a lot of these is because I want you to know I'm not making this up. This is right out of the journal articles. So after tarring a number of animals, now back in the day, you had to put coal tar on these animals to cause cancer, okay? And they received the usual diets, a similar group, which were given the regular diet, and also vitamin E with fortifying with wheat germ oil. He noticed that the group fed vitamin E or wheat germ oil remained in good condition longer, tended to develop cancer later, and showed the lessening incidence of cancer than the control group. Now we're going to see later that it was something else in wheat germ oil besides alpha tocopherol that was probably having this effect. But my point is, when alpha tocopherol fails, it didn't fail with wheat germ oil. That's my point here. Now, antioxidant connection. Now I'm showing this because in the 1990s, alpha tocopherol was known as an antioxidant, and then it failed miserably. So I want to show the early real antioxidant connection to wheat germ oil. This vitamin is easily destroyed by slight changes in rancidity of the fats in which it is carried in solution. However, wheat germ oil has a high acetyl value and therefore presumably rich in antioxidizers. And it is to this that wheat germ oil owes its stabilizing activity on vitamin E. Scientists have shown that a close association of vitamin E and antioxidizers is necessary for the preservation of vitamin E. So here what we're seeing is that vitamin E is protected by all the antioxidants that are in there. So this will come up later in the presentation and it'll be put into context, but I just want to set the grounds for that information. Now, heart connection. How did vitamin E get related to the heart? Because in the 1990s, every cardiologist was giving alpha tocopherol, but actually it's not alpha tocopherol, it's wheat germ oil. And I want to show you the most unbelievable story of how they figured out that wheat germ oil was valuable in heart conditions. Now, story is out of the Cornet 1948 for vitamin disease, vitamin E. Now, even though it says vitamin E, they're not talking about alpha tocopherol. They're talking about wheat germ and wheat germ oil. Okay. During the summer of 1945, Floyd Skelton, a medical student at Western Ontario, wanted a research project. So Shute suggested that he investigate the E estrogen antagonism. Now, I just want to give you a little background on why he would do that. And back in the day, he noticed that the women that responded best to wheat germ oil in getting them pregnant was the women that had high estrogen levels. So he assumed that wheat germ oil must have some effect on the estrogen levels, and that was why it was helping these women maintain pregnancy. I don't necessarily think that that was correct, but it was his, it was a good early observation. So Skelton agreed and started injecting dogs with estrogens. Soon he noticed something strange. Blood vessels under the dog's skin broke down. But when the animals were given E, or wheat germ oil, the purple patches disappeared. Skelton reported this to Shute at an opportune moment. Well, Shute had a friend, Vogelsang, who had a 67-year-old man with hypertensive heart disease. He was so bad off. I mean, he was going into cardiac failure. His kidneys were going bad, everything. But the rupture of his blood vessels in his legs made large purple patches. So that caught their attention because they thought, purple patches in the dogs given high estrogen and purple patches in this man, maybe it'll help him. So cleared up some such hemorrhages in dogs. What about in man? Skelton calculated the amount of vitamin E required. Each day, the old man took massive doses of wheat germ oil, not alpha tocopherol. On the fifth day, Vogelsang was making routine rounds of the hospital. The patient's bed was empty. The old man was helping floor nurses with their trays. The patient reported that he hadn't felt better in years. Breathlessness had gone, and so was the leg swelling. He announced proudly that he had done more work that morning than in several years. Well, that's what led to using it in a lot more heart patients, and then immediately writing this article that put all the successes of using wheat germ oil. And that's how vitamin E as wheat germ oil got a high reputation for heart disease. Okay, fatigue and stamina. Now, when I was up in that library, I read just tons of research in the 1950s where they were using wheat germ oil to increase athletic performance. So it's not the sterility and abortion that interests the physicians, but the promotion of vigor and vitality, the natural enemies of infectious susceptibility and general weakness. Probably a more fitting epitaph descriptive of the function of vitamin E is not the designation sterility vitamin, but rather the vitamin of general fitness. Well, think about it. If you are going to need to get pregnant, you're going to need to eventually chase these kids around the room. So obviously, it's not a jump that you would need, get sterility in something that also gave you good physical performance or physical fitness. Okay, so now in kind of a recap, discovering the active in wheat germ oil. The clinical application of wheat germ oil as vitamin E, fertility, muscle degeneration, hot flashes, cancer, fatigue, stamina, heart stamina, and antioxidants were there to preserve the wheat germ oil effect, not as anything else. So that's where we're starting our story. Now, what is the active factor in wheat germ oil? Now, if I asked you what's the active factor in a car, if I said, is it the gasoline? Is it the engine? Is it the transmission? Is it the wheels? Is it the drive shaft? You'd think I was crazy, right? You'd say, well, they're all essential. It was designed that way, so everything's essential. So why in the heck wouldn't they just keep considering wheat germ oil as vitamin E? Why would they need to isolate the one active factor? Well, here's why. In the 1930s, the prevailing belief was that foods do not relate to health. There is no relationship from food to health. I mean, truly, that's the truth of it. So some of the researchers needed to prove that food did have health properties. So how did they do that? That's the question. Well, they were all chemists and pharmacists back then doing this research. So they created what I call, and this is my own terminology, reductionistic disease model of research. Now, all I'm really saying is that they didn't have all the technology we have today to look at epigenetics and how food is, all these different compounds affect our genetic performance to boost our health. They didn't have all that back then. They just had, well, if we can leave out a isolated compound, create a disease, and then put the isolated compound back in the body, cure the disease, then that nutrient is essential and all the rest are unessential. So that's really what they did back then. That's how they thought. So which compound in wheat germ oil is responsible for the effect? It couldn't be a bunch. It had to be one specific compound. So in wheat, there's all these nutrients in wheat. There's all these nutrients in wheat. Now, to boil it down to one isolated compound, how did they do that? It was a mistake, but how did they do that? Well, that's going to be our story, is isolation of alpha tocopherol, probably the biggest mistake in nutritional history. Here's how they did it. Now, this is the title. This is in 1936. Actually, they did this in 1935, but it came out in 36. But this is the isolation from wheat germ oil of an alcohol, alpha tocopherol, having the properties of vitamin E. So what does that really say? That says that if you are giving wheat germ oil or you're giving alpha tocopherol, you're going to get the same exact results nutritionally from a vitamin E standpoint of view. And so how they did that is they did this. They said the alcohol for which we propose the name alpha tocopherol, when given in a single dose of 3 milligrams, always enables vitamin E deficient rats to bear young. Okay, so off this one experiment, that's what they came to the conclusion. So Greek word tokos, childbirth, pherol, to bear, and alcohol. It was the alcohol to bear young for these rats to bear young. Now, here's the thing that they didn't, it was in the article, but they didn't promote it, and it was not relevant to them, but looking back, it's very relevant. There were other compounds in wheat germ oil that enabled the rats to bear young. So why didn't they say it was a complex like the tocopherols or something, get all the compounds in wheat germ oil that enabled the rats to bear young? That would have made more sense, but they didn't. They isolated one. Why did they choose alpha tocopherol and not gamma tocopherol or any of the other ones? Well, the other compounds needed more dose than alpha tocopherol. So alpha tocopherol in the smallest dose got the biggest effect. Now you have to understand, these were druggists back then. They thought like druggists, and that's how they think, is isolation and purity and potency through the amount that you have. So that's why they picked it, and they ignored everything else in wheat germ oil. They just simply said it's inert. Okay, so then newsflash, right after they did this, this is what came out in the news in the New York Physician. Synthetic vitamin E, alpha tocopherol, is as effective as wheat germ oil. So what did the experts told the world that alpha tocopherol was vitamin E, and you no longer needed to use wheat germ oil, as alpha tocopherol was just as effective. Okay. So from here on out, the experts, alpha tocopherol is vitamin E. Now, they did one more experiment to solidify that they're correct. You have to solidify you're correct. So here's what they did. In 1938, they made a synthetic tocopherol. Now, we always think they made a synthetic tocopherol to fortify foods, and that came later. That's not why they made a synthetic. Here's why they made synthetics. If I have a natural wheat germ complex, and here's the oil, I have a bunch of unknown factors in there with the alpha tocopherol. So if I extract alpha tocopherol, I could bring along some of those impurities. So good researcher says, well, if I can make it out of coal tar and I can rearrange the molecules and make a synthetic alpha tocopherol, then if both natural alpha tocopherol and synthetic alpha tocopherol cure rats of muscle and nerve degeneration, then I have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that I've got the right compound. Well, yeah, that's good research, but it just is going in the wrong direction. So then that led to the international standard for vitamin E. So research was done by experts. Now, you know, just because you're an expert does not mean that you know what you're doing. But that's what we believe today, is that, you know, you're a research expert, you know what you're doing. So in 14 laboratories in Europe and America, so that puts credibility to it, synthetic alpha tocopherol has been adopted as the international standard. Now remember, they were using it in all lab animals, from you know, sheep to pigs to cows, for, you know, fertility issues. So now it's the international standard because they know it's going to work in all animals because it worked on the rats. Recommended that the IUs, that's why we have IUs of vitamin D. Have you ever wondered that? That's why, because 1 milligram of the standard preparation that prevents reabsorption gestation in rats deprived of vitamin E is now the standard. Okay, so if you're a rat and you weigh, I don't know, 10 milligrams, and you're a monkey and you weigh 100 times that, then you need 100 times the international unit for that animal. So it was all by weight. I mean, it makes sense back then, but it was, even though it was all wrong, it makes sense from their perspective. So here's what we have. Both wheat germ oil and alpha tocopherol demonstrate positive results in fertility and nerve and muscle degeneration in rats. Wheat germ oil equals alpha tocopherol. Well, so they thought, well, now that we've isolated the active, controlled research on humans, the alpha tocopherol is going to get all these results over here. So they were so sure, they named it equal. They should have first tested alpha tocopherol, and when it failed, then that would have forced them to go back and look at wheat germ oil. But because they designate it as active and we're testing the active, then when the active fails, then wheat germ oil fails. Do you see the thinking there? So here is the circulation, 1973. No heart disease in man has been related to a vitamin E deficiency. The pharmacologic use of vitamin E in doses 10 to 50 times the daily requirement was recommended in 1947 for the treatment of a variety of cardiovascular disorders, including intermittent claudication, angina pectoris, coronary occlusion, congestive heart failure, thrombophlebitis, thromboembolism, but no evidence of its effectiveness has been convincingly verified during the ensuing 25 years. It failed miserably is what they're saying, but they think that wheat germ oil failed because they had the active, see? But what researchers should have said was alpha tocopherol and wheat germ oil are not the same clinically. We should reevaluate wheat germ oil. That's what they should have done, but they did not do that, okay? Now, effects of alpha tocopherol acetate on swimming endurance in trained swimmers. Alpha tocopherol did not appear to have any effect on their swimming endurance. So are they proving vitamin E wrong? Well, yes, as alpha tocopherol, they're proving it wrong, but not necessarily wheat germ oil. They should have said, we should reevaluate wheat germ oil, but they didn't. Okay, they did not reevaluate it. So this is Nutrition Reviews 1963. Among the many clinical conditions in which vitamin E alpha tocopherol treatment has been tested, probably the most attention has been given to the progressive muscular dystrophy and habitual abortions. Do you see why? Because of all the hype on wheat germ oil and wheat germ back in the day. Okay. Now, vitamin E as alpha tocopherol, it failed in all as a drug. Alpha tocopherol failed in all these conditions. Indeed, until quite recently, no human disease had been shown to respond to vitamin E in a convincing fashion. So what was funny is vitamin E was known as the laughing stock. It was known as the vitamin without a disease. Because remember, I told you to be a vitamin, you had to put it in or take it out, cause a disease, put it back in, cure a disease, and then it was a vitamin. So it didn't do any of that. So for 25, 30 years, it was a complete failure. Or from 36 to 60 or 59, it was a complete failure. So the failure of alpha tocopherol in man, the mistake was made because all animals do not respond the same to alpha tocopherol. Hundreds of compounds in wheat germ oil contributing to the effect. Researchers were chemists and pharmacists, not nutritionalists. They had no understanding of whole food synergy. They didn't know anything about epigenetics back then, nothing. They were just crudely making their way through nutrition. So you might be thinking, well, I learned in high school that alpha tocopherol was recognized as a vitamin. So how is it recognized as a vitamin? Well, that's an amazing story. So 1959, the FDA declares alpha tocopherol essential in man. I wonder what disease. I wonder if it was heart disease, cancer. I wonder if it was the early fatigue, or what disease would be associated with it, related to its vitamin E history. Human research demonstrated alpha tocopherol was necessary to prevent a particular type of anemia. A type of anemia had nothing to do with wheat germ oil, absolutely nothing to do with wheat germ oil. But as a drug, alpha tocopherol as an isolated drug had an effect. Did researchers ever consider the fact they isolated the wrong factor? No, they didn't. They were just happy. Fortunately, they got lucky and found a disease. They were just happy because now they're in the record books. Instead of being the laughing stock, they were in the record books. So that's probably why we didn't hear about any of this. Other researchers knew alpha tocopherol was not the active in wheat germ oil, but nobody listened to them. Well, here, 1944, this is Naturopathic Association. This is a research where they took dogs that would get these bad neuromuscular diseases and die, and they took 90 of these dogs, put 30 in control. They didn't give anything to them. Alpha tocopherol group was 30 of them, and wheat germ oil, 30 of them. Well, the control group, 21 of them got the neuromuscular disease. In the alpha tocopherol, 23. So they were worse. You were worse off if you were in the alpha tocopherol group. And only 5 got the neuromuscular disease if they were in the wheat germ oil. So you know what their conclusion was this. For the first time, we have a clear outline of the presence of an important factor in wheat germ oil, which is not alpha tocopherol. For many years, we in our laboratory have suggested that research workers reporting work with alpha tocopherol or wheat germ oil should not consider these substances identical. Yes, because they made a mistake by isolating alpha tocopherol, but they're not going to go backwards and admit a mistake like that. That's probably not going to happen. So here, British Journal of Sports Medicine, 1971. Wheat germ oil produced significant changes and certain positive trends towards amplification of the T wave of the EKG. Now all you need to know is that the T wave relates to the heart repolarizing, and the better it repolarizes, the better it can contract next time. So it just helps the contractibility of the heart on a subclinical level, and that's why it helps with performance level, or with athletic performance. see? So it helps muscle, and heart is a muscle. So they were doing this, and they were saying, wait a minute, wheat germ oil works. Here's another one, neuromuscular disorders amenable to wheat germ oil therapy. This was Journal of Neurosurgical Psychiatry, 1951. Of the 107 patients, 13 showed definite improvement. In conclusion, is that certain neuromuscular disorders respond to wheat germ oil therapy. Until more is known about the factors in wheat germ oil effective against human disease, no claims should be made for the individual elements of which without good proof. Even vitamin E itself is a complex containing several tocopherols. If the lesson of the vitamin B complex family is to be kept in mind, this point should be clear. So obviously everybody, not everybody, but people were understanding that a big mistake had been made, and they were trying to point it out, but the experts wouldn't listen to them. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe this channel if you want to see more information like this on nutrition, getting to the root of the problem in nutrition. Okay, so here, the role of wheat germ concentrate in prepartum care. That same article, they review it beautifully, so I'm going to go through it. Since the 1930s, reports have appeared intermittently on the effects of wheat germ oil concentrate on pregnancy and its complications. Unfortunately, much of this work has been ignored or rejected because of a widespread assumption that the effectiveness of wheat germ oil depends on its alpha tocopherol content. Yes, because they made it equal to wheat germ oil and alpha tocopherol, and they made that mistake so long ago. Failure of the tocopherols, natural or synthetic, to prove beneficial has cast a cloud on the work done with wheat germ oil, obviously. It has been shown numerous occasions that the effect of wheat germ oil depends in no way upon its alpha tocopherol content. The presumed synonymy of alpha tocopherol and wheat germ oil has been so widely accepted that much valid work has done with wheat germ oil, both in the field of obstetrics and that of neuromuscular physiology, has been disregarded. Now I'm going to show you how wheat germ oil, by be considering inert, creates the next biggest mistake in nutritional history, and that's when it's related to an antioxidant, and we'll get there in a minute. But I'm just pointing out that you make a mistake early and it's just going to perpetuate, and perpetuate. So now we have wheat germ oil. There's all the results. Here's what you get with wheat germ oil, and I'm just going to review this because I know it comes pretty fast, so we're going to review it. So wheat germ oil back in the early days was vitamin E. They isolated alpha tocopherol in 1935. Then experts said wheat germ oil has one active compound, which is alpha tocopherol. Researchers can now test the active like good researchers do. You test the active. Over the next 30 years, alpha tocopherol failed. So because alpha tocopherol failed, then wheat germ oil failed. No attempt to reevaluate wheat germ oil. Why? Each animal varies in a response to alpha tocopherol. Deficiency. 1959, alpha tocopherol makes a spectacular comeback because it's related to some type of macrocytic anemia. Nobody's ever heard of that. I bet you can't even find that on the internet anywhere. 1959, FDA declares alpha tocopherol as an essential nutrient. Yeah, if you're a researcher out there and you want to write an incredible paper, call me up and I'll show you all the real research behind this, because I'm only giving you the tip of the iceberg, and we'll write a research project together. Okay, so it all boils down to wheat germ oil is vitamin E. Now, this is where it gets really spectacular, is rebirth of alpha tocopherol as an antioxidant in the 1990s. So if you're of my generation, you'll probably know alpha tocopherol or vitamin E as an antioxidant, and they thought that was going to save the world. Okay, so mistake number one, we went over that in pretty good detail. Now we're going to go over to the recent mistake. So we're going to see that this mistake leads to this mistake big time. So how did we make this huge mistake and increase mortality rates in all these people based on our mistake back here? So that's where we're headed. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to briefly go over this. So I'm going to overly simplify it just for speed. Okay, the oxidation theory of pathology. Basically, back in the day, they found a lot of diseases that were related to increased oxidation. And I'll get to what that means in a minute. But yeah, if there's a lot of oxidation in these diseases, and they said, oh, alpha tocopherol is an antioxidant. So you think, oh, okay, oxidation, antioxidant, okay, they kind of go together. One will neutralize the other. So maybe alpha tocopherol doesn't cure a specific disease, but maybe it's part of beta carotene and vitamin A, or I'm sorry, beta carotene and other antioxidants like vitamin C. And they work on neutralizing free radicals point of view. So the value is due to the antioxidant potential, not a specific disease potential. So this actually does make some sense, unless you know a lot of physiology. It doesn't, but it does to a chemist maybe. So what is oxidation? Well, simply put, let's just look at this. See this big round green dot in the center? That's a molecule. And a molecule to stay stable, I need 8 electrons around it. Now I've only got 7 here. So if I've only got 7 electrons, this molecule is going to steal an electron from, say, a liver cell, or in this case, a liver cell. And that'll steal another electron. That'll steal another electron. And then you have this electron stealing and blasting holes in tissue and causing oxidation. And, you know, this is the pathology of disease, you know, is oxidation. I mean, this was back in the 80s, 90s, you know. So then antioxidants would come along and save the day. And see this green dot down here by where I have antioxidant? It donates its green dot up here. So now this molecule has 8 electrons. It's happy. It's no longer going to steal from its neighbor. And here's born the basic, you know, antioxidant theory of disease, or how these antioxidants are going to help with disease. Okay, so here we go. So on the left, I'm just going to recap that again, just what I said, just from this out of 2018. The cigarette smoke, air pollution causes these reactive oxygen species, or these things that, oh, we've got to neutralize those electrons, or those reactive oxygen species. So we bring in vitamin C, vitamin E, and carotenoids, and they act as antioxidants. That decreases inflammation, and that's going to have an effect on disease. That was the thinking. That was and I can't say that's wrong. That's just, you know, hindsight's 20/20. But that's like, we have oxidation in the body, and you have antioxidants. You pour the antioxidants into the body, you neutralize the oxidation, you change the color, and everybody lives happily ever after. Okay, so that was the theory behind it. So where did researchers get the idea that alpha tocopherol would help in this antioxidant idea related to heart disease? Okay, well, here's the one, well, there was more than this, but this is the one article that got it going. The effects of oral supplementation with D-alpha tocopherol on vitamin E content in human LDL lipoproteins and the resistance to oxidation. Well, what does all that mean? Well, let me explain it. The present study clearly shows that in humans, the oxidation resistance of LDL can be increased by vitamin E supplementation. So think about it, folks. Now remember, just on a basic level, the LDL is supposedly the bad guys, the HDL, the good guys. So if you have oxidation of the LDL cholesterol, that's a bad thing, because then it's going to get plugged into your arteries. So if you can increase your oxidation resistance, so your resistance to oxidation and these free radical damage, then you can help these patients that are cardiac patients And that's how vitamin E has its effect on the heart. Okay, so then every cardiologist started giving vitamin E supplementation based on this study. Now, let me show you materials and methods. And I know you all are going to get this. I know everybody's going to get this. So read this before I read it. Do you see a problem with this? Watch this, materials and methods, RRR alpha tocopherol. Now, I don't have time to explain it, but this is the natural form of alpha tocopherol. There's 8 of them. When you make it synthetic, the RRR is natural. So at least they have the natural, so they're doing good there. Soft capsules filled with 75 or 400 international units of RRR alpha tocopherol. I applaud them. That's an excellent study. But what do they put it in? Wheat germ oil. They think it's completely inert. They think wheat germ oil is completely worthless if you take out the alpha tocopherol. They have no idea the confounding hundreds of variables that you just put into your research project that are probably, so do you think, my question to you, since alpha tocopherol failed for 30 years in any heart disease, do you think it's the alpha tocopherol getting the results in this experiment? Or do you think it's a synergistic approach of about 100 nutrients in wheat germ oil that we're going to study later are getting? Well, my bet is it's on the wheat germ oil and not that alpha tocopherol somehow makes a miraculous recovery in the research world and starts getting results with heart patients. No, I don't think it worked out that way. Most likely wheat germ oil had that effect. Now watch. Now this is in the year 2008. The safety of large doses of vitamin E went unquestioned, virtually unquestioned until the early 2000s. Large doses of vitamin E. When several studies were published showing that the consumption of vitamin E from dietary supplements increased mortality as well as the risk of gastrointestinal cancer and heart failure. How did it have the opposite effect? We thought we were going to cure all these people with this antioxidant theory. These studies prompted numerous letters to the editor. Yeah, these people were saying, wait, what is going on here? You were leading us down this path, and all of a sudden it didn't pan out. Both the medical community and the general public became confused and concerned about the use of vitamin E supplements. No, not as vitamin E as wheat germ oil. That's perfectly safe. But if you take high-dose antioxidant alpha tocopherol as a drug, that is not safe. That is not safe at all. Okay, so I just want to make that big distinguishing feature here. No evidence to support antioxidant supplements for primary or secondary prevention. Now, this is back in 2008. Supplemental vitamin C, beta carotene, and vitamin E as drugs, not as nutrients, may increase mortality. I mean, I could go into beta carotene, vitamins, I could go crazy with that stuff. So be careful with it in high doses for long periods of time, okay? So my point is that you need to be careful. When you're taking a high dose as a drug, you have to be careful. It's not a nutrient at that point. It needs to be considered a drug. Now, what do I mean by a drug? I thought all vitamin E, whether it's in a million dose or a small amount in a food, it's all the same vitamin. No, it's not. Let me explain something very important. Here's wheat germ oil on the right, and this red dot represents alpha tocopherol. See, it only takes up a small space in the whole oil. Now, in wheat germ oil, alpha tocopherol is only a small amount in all of this because it has all these other nutrients that exist with it, not just alpha tocopherol. But when you isolate alpha tocopherol, you isolate it and then you put it in a dose that you could never see in nature. You know, you'd never get a 1,200 international units in nature. You could never do that. See, so that's a drug. That's a pharmacological drug. That's no longer a nutrient, in my opinion. Okay. Now, let me just drive this point home. So So let's just say for the sake of argument, that 15 milligrams of alpha tocopherol is your daily value. Now watch. 1 cup of sunflower seeds would get you the daily value. You'd have to eat a whole cup of sunflower seeds to get that daily value. You'd have to eat almost a cup of almonds to get that daily value. So it's a little more compact in almonds than it is sunflower seeds. 1 stick of butter. Boy, you'd have to eat a lot of sticks of butter to get your alpha tocopherol for the day. 1 teaspoon of wheat germ oil. That's 20 milligrams of alpha tocopherol. Now, vitamin E as a drug at 1,200 international units, that is 804 milligrams. Now, how many truckloads of almonds would you have to eat to get 804 milligrams? How many cups of almonds? How many cups of sunflower seeds? You could not do it. You would get sick before you would do that, see? So my point is, our body in history has never seen a pharmacological dose of nutrients ever, except for maybe vitamin D, because you get 10,000, 20,000 international units, going out in the sun. So yes, you can get high doses of vitamin D in the sun, but normally you can't from food, okay? Except for maybe vitamin A in certain liver cases. There's exceptions to the rule, but generally you can't get high doses like this from a food. So all of the compounds in wheat, all contribute to the effect is the idea. And so, now some may not, well, that's a whole different story. Okay, so they all contribute in some way to the benefits of wheat, okay? Not just alpha tocopherol, and especially when you take it as a high dose drug. So dangers of pharmacological doses of alpha tocopherol. Now this is from 2019. So I'm being good and I'm using the latest research on this. The intake of alpha tocopherol for coronary heart disease, cancer, eye disease, and cognitive decline of the brain in clinical trials shows no effect of treatment or alleviation. So as a drug, and who cares how we could have arbitrarily picked any compound out of wheat germ and made a drug out of it. But as a drug, alpha tocopherol fails as a drug. Oral intake of high concentrations, pharmacological concentrations of alpha tocopherol increases the possibility of mortality, bleeding, and prostate cancer. Oops, that doesn't sound good. Ingestion of antioxidants such as ascorbic acid and tocopherols weaken the defense mechanism of the body. Now, maybe ascorbic acid, in small increments of time and high doses may actually have a beneficial effect, but over a long time, I'd be real careful in taking high ascorbic acid doses over the long term. So just understand, we'll have to do a lot of presentations on these different areas. Okay, now, here's the kicker. Now, this is one of the foremost authorities on alpha tocopherol. Furthermore, in vivo studies have also shown that alpha tocopherol is not able, at physiological concentrations, to protect against antioxidant-induced damage or prevent disease allegedly caused by oxidative damage. Now, what does that mean in English? Okay, here we go. In English, cell wall out here, that's your cell, okay? Now, inside the cell, you have the mitochondria, which is another organ inside the cell that makes all or most of your energy. Now, 80% of your supposedly oxidation that's bad for you is made in the mitochondria. And a healthy mitochondria makes substances like superoxide dismutase that neutralizes this oxidation within the mitochondria. So alpha tocopherol is out here. It's not in physiological concentration, so it's in low concentration in the body, and it's not in a place in the cell that could even neutralize oxidation, because that's done, 80% of your oxidation is here. So it's not able to even function as an antioxidant. So do you see how the alpha tocopherol is why I say it's the biggest mistake in nutritional history? Antioxidants, potential to cancel the effects of exercise. Watch this, reactive oxygen species that, oh, we thought were bad because that promotes destruction of tissue, created during exercise are now thought to play, a beneficial role in exercise. Wow. Some studies suggest high doses of antioxidants decrease some beneficial effects of exercise. So after your exercise, you dump in high antioxidants, take your C, take your whatever. You may not want to do that. They suggest fruits and vegetables may promote health effects despite their content of antioxidants. So remember what I showed in the beginning with wheat germ oil, that the antioxidants there were to preserve it? Because back in the day, you would grind your wheat at the local mill before the turn of the century, and you would go home with a bag of wheat, ground up wheat, and it would last for about a week, and then you'd have to go back because it would go rancid, it would go bad. So you have to, the fruits and vegetables have antioxidants to preserve these nutrients. So benefits of these reactive oxygen species, well, you inject them into bacteria to kill bacteria. You detoxify the body through reactions using this oxidation. You kill cancer cells. You inject cancer cells with oxidation, or these reactive oxygen species, to kill cancer cells. So do you think it's a good idea to dump in drugs that are antioxidants that could dangerously interfere with these protective functions? I would be very careful before using nutrients as drugs, especially the ones that are antioxidants. Now, this is a book that came out in, I think, 2009. They said the wrong vitamin E. Oh my gosh. And I read this whole entire book, and I was like, that's the first time I've ever heard of anybody saying it's the wrong vitamin E. So because of all the problems they had, they said the wrong vitamin E was used in all those trials. Well, I read the book, and they had no idea about the history of wheat germ oil tied to, they just knew from the failure of alpha tocopherol that it was the wrong vitamin E. Alpha tocopherol studied for all those trials was wrong. They didn't know exactly why, but the negative results suggest our paradigm is wrong. That's why I'm putting this video out there on YouTube. I want to make sure our paradigm is correct. The new vitamin E definition, the 4 tocopherols, that was back in the 50s, 60s maybe. The 4 tocotrienols, now that's, if you look up the vitamin E complex, you'll see the 4 tocopherols and the 4 tocotrienols. What are these tocotrienols? We'll get into that. And the tocomoninols. So now the new vitamin E definition. Okay, here we go. So tocotrienol research highlights immune response, cancer, and reproductive health. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. What have we studied in the past, in this presentation, that might have had reproductive benefits, cancer, and immune response? What did we study? Wheat germ oil. So how much do you want to bet that these tocotrienols are in wheat germ oil? Tocotrienols mediate a cardioprotection, preconditioning-like effect. Makes your heart pump better, or your heart muscle work better. All your muscles work better. At nanomolar concentrations, alpha tocotrienol, not alpha tocopherol, prevents neurodegeneration. Well, see, the researchers poo-pooed alpha tocotrienol because it was in such small concentrations. They thought, oh, it can't be effective because it's too small, because they're druggists. That's how they think. But they were wrong. They were wrong about that. It does prevent neurodegeneration. So here, tocotrienols, the vitamin E of the 21st century. They don't say anything about wheat germ oil because they don't know the connection there. Its potential against cancer and other chronic diseases, tumor suppression, cardiovascular diseases, neurological diseases. See, so now they're promoting these. So the historical significance of tocotrienol research. Well, all of the things of wheat germ oil, and then you put together the modern research of tocotrienols. So how many of you would guess that the tocotrienols would be high in wheat germ oil? Yes, absolutely. Are there tocotrienols in wheat germ oil? Absolutely. Look at this. Wheat germ oil, very high in the tocotrienols. Now look, there's other foods that are out there that are higher. Now, from a druggist point of view, you might look at this and say, oh, palm oil is the best one to take because it's highest there, because that's how we're taught to think from a drug-like mentality. But really, from a nutritional perspective, what we're finding epigenetically, wheat germ oil, because of its other hundreds of other nutrients, like we're going to see the polycosanols and all these other things in wheat germ oil, you don't just go by how much horsepower a car is, you go by the function of a food or a car. So barley has its own functional properties, and all these may have their own functional properties, but wheat germ oil is the original vitamin E, and it's still the best vitamin E out there, period, hands down. So don't just look at another isolate. We've got to think about this from a perspective of nutrition and not isolated nutrition research. So historical observations, tocotrienol observations, why are they not being promoted in wheat germ oil? Because nobody knows to do that. They don't know their history. If you know your history, you understand how all this fits together. That's why I'm getting all this out there, because you know, I think this information should be out there. And let me know if you want me to do other projects on this. We can dive into other areas. Should the octocosanols be considered part of the E complex? Well, look, octocosanols. Wheat germ oil has been reported to improve human physical fitness. This effect is attributed to its high polycosanol, specifically its octocosanol content. So obviously, from a perspective of isolate research, yes, you'd have to consider those as part of the E complex if you understood the history of wheat germ oil. So look, wheat germ oil is composed of, now this is just the headings, alcohols, tocopherols, the terpenols, the sterols, all aldehydes, all of these groups. Now there's hundreds of compounds in here, but these synergistically give its effect. Okay, so wheat germ oil is used for treating circulatory, cardiac disorders, and weaknesses. This is out of 2017. They don't know that was the original use of this. Nowhere in the article did they say that I remember. Wheat germ oil has a number of nutritional and health benefits, such as reducing plasma and liver cholesterol levels. Oh my gosh, but remember, we put the wheat germ oil in that original study that showed benefits on your LDL. What if they saw benefits on the cholesterol levels too? See, then they would think, oh, it must be the alpha tocopherol. No, it's the wheat germ oil. Improving physical endurance, possibly helping to delay the effects of aging. Yeah, I think because it helps with the mitochondria, probably. These effects are attributed to the high concentration of bioactive compounds, not one isolated alpha tocopherol present in the oil. See, it's the synergistic effect of wheat germ oil that gets your results. Now, so is vitamin E only the 8 tocopherols and tocotrienols? No, it's not. But researchers getting closer. They're getting closer to the original. Tocomoninols, polycosanols, octocosanols, the list goes on and on. It's all the vitamin E. So in my mind, I consider wheat germ oil the original and the best source of vitamin E. So instead of whittling the car down to its components, let's just consider wheat germ oil a functional unit, and it was designed that way. Mother Nature designed it that way. So it's all important until considered otherwise. See, look at it the backwards. Instead of it's all unimportant until deemed important, we're going to consider it's all important until deemed unimportant. Okay, so in conclusion, refining of food for food storage caused disease. Researchers discovered the health benefits of wheat germ oil. Taking out the oil, put it back in. Researchers mistakenly thought alpha tocopherol was responsible. Alpha tocopherol failed 2 times as an isolate. Because alpha tocopherol failed, wheat germ oil failed. Newer researchers showed that vitamin E is a complex, but I'm saying researchers have farther to go. Researchers should reevaluate the original clinical observations of wheat germ oil. So yes, contact me. I will help you in any way I can, bring this back to life, because it really needs to be revived. Because what I'm showing you is only maybe 1% of the research I have available to me. Vitamin E should be considered wheat germ oil, period, in the store. Now, I do want to close with one caveat. I know you're all thinking, oh my gosh, I got to run out there to the store and get my wheat germ oil because, you want a preventative or whatnot. You see benefit that you might have from taking it. But here's one thing you need to understand is that to get all of these nutritional benefits, you need to understand it's how the oil is processed. So it's difficult to process wheat germ oil and retain the sensitive nutritional factors. Okay, very hard to do that. The quality varies greatly on how you process it. So if you want what I recommend, you can contact me through the description. If you want to take your chances and get your own out there on the market, I highly discourage just going indiscriminately at this because you might be wasting your money. So. Okay, that's the end of this. So like and subscribe, and we'll come out with more of these. Give your comments, any other complexes we need to look into. Thank you for being here, and contact me with any information you need. Well, thank you very much.